Supposed to ask, where were you before coming to Stony Brook?
Well, you skipped the introduction section.
Oh, we're each.
Oh, dude.
This is going so well. This is A plus.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Phelps. I graduated this past May, sort of, in the virtual graduation. I studied with Tina while I was at Stony Brook, and I currently live in Athens, Ohio, and I teach at Ohio University.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Betka, and I too graduated this past May. First COVID class graduation. And I studied with both Gil and Tina. I did both my master's and DMA at Stony Brook. And I'm currently based out of Long Island.
And I'm
Hi,
Daniel.
everyone.
Okay, go ahead. You go.
Hey.
Ladies first, go.
Oh, sorry. You could go, Daniel. Go.
Okay, I'm Daniel Anastasio. I graduated 2019 in San Antonio, Texas, teaching here. And I was at Juilliard for master's and Stony Brook doctorate with Tina and Gil, just like Anna. Yaren.
Hi, I'm Yaren Kim. I graduated a few years ago. Wow, I actually don't remember when I graduated. Did I graduate the same year as you, Daniel?
I don't remember either. I don't know.
We started together. Yeah, a few years back, recently. I currently live in between. I live in Seattle, Washington, and South Bend, Indiana. I split my time in two places. I teach at Central Washington University, and I studied with Gil during my DMA studies in Stony Brook.
And I'm Mikkel. I'm almost finished with Stony Brook, hanging in there. I'm working with Gil, but I love every opportunity I get to work with Tina as well. I'm based out in Long Island, and yeah, I'm done.
All right, Emily, let's kick this off.
All right. So, I know Daniel from pre-Stony Brook, but actually none of the rest of you. So where were you guys before you ended up at Stony Brook?
Well, I did my master's at Indiana University Bloomington. Before that, I was in Oberlin, Ohio for my undergrad. I had 2 years off between my master's and DMA. It's just teaching and had a job and was kind of soul searching. And then I met Gil up in Banff when I did a chamber music residency, and he said, "You should get your DMA." So then, so I did. And it was one of the best things I did. It was great.
Yeah, I heard about Tina and Gil from my undergraduate at Cornell. I was studying with Zach Birkin there, and he's like childhood friends with Tina, actually, weirdly random. They went to Aspen together and Music Academy, the West and stuff. And Gil came and did a master class at Cornell, and I played Four Violin Sonata for him on the piano, not the violin. And he totally destroyed me in a great way. And I was very, very inspired. And yeah, then after Cornell, I was at Juilliard for master's for 2 years with Jerome Lowenthal. Really wanted a break from that, so I took a year off and studied with Ann Shine in Connecticut, where she lives. I just saw her sometimes just so I could keep taking lessons, and she's a very inspiring figure. And then DMA at Stony Brook, and life-changing DMA, as I'm sure we'll all get into as the hour progresses.
I was in Toronto, Canada before I came to Stony Brook, and a lot of Canadians, Stony Brook in particular. So I reached out to Gil and I emailed him asking, can I take a lesson with you? I'm interested to study with you because I've heard so many good things, and like your career is so diverse, etc. And he said that he doesn't like to take people in for lessons because he doesn't want to be biased if they happen to audition. at the school?
Cool. I started serious study of piano at North Carolina School of the Arts in Winston-Salem with a guy named Clifton Matthews, who's still with us, a wonderful musician and mind. And he, probably my second year, he told me about a video that he saw with a pianist named Gilbert Kalish, and he was talking to a room full of people. And I think he started off the speech by saying all of his accolades. So my teacher's like, who is this guy? Why is he saying about all of his good things? I've played here, I've played with this, and we all know Gil has done everything. And then immediately after listing every high, he said, and yet I still don't know how to play the piano. And then I said, who is this man? I really want to know. And he talked about how beautiful his teaching philosophy was and dug into recordings. Then after North Carolina, I did my master's at Cincinnati. And when it was time for DMA, Stony Brook was one of the top choices, and somehow I made it.
I, like Daniel, kind of got burnt out on school after doing my master's. I did my bachelor's and my master's at Juilliard with Julian Martin. And during my master's, I started playing with two really good friends, became my best friends in a piano trio. And we ended up moving to Boston and being in residence at NEC. So I was out of school for, I think, 6 years before I came and started my doctorate. The Prio had a great 8-year run, and we decided to move on to other projects. And I ended up at Stony Brook. I drove to register the morning after our last concert, so it was a very abrupt transition. So it seems like most of us heard about Stony Brook by either meeting Gil, meeting Tina, or coming into contact with them through their playing in some form. But I guess I'm also curious to know what you guys knew about the school, if anything, before you ended up here.
What I've heard about it was that it was very performance oriented school, for performers and for people who like to perform, mainly because the faculty are performers across the whole department. Everybody is an active performers, right? But it also has a good balance of like what academia has to offer it. It's a DMA. But I also did hear that it is also very much, you can personalize your studies a lot too. There are a lot of classes that you can like search out for. And that was an attraction for me because I had a very pretty rigorous academic experience at IU. At Indiana University is heavily academic school. So it was a change of scenery, and it was something that I kind of needed after teaching for 2 years after master's. So that was a big attraction for me.
Yeah, it has a little bit of a reputation of being an easy DMA because it doesn't have some of the academic like constrictions that some programs do. And because of that, it's kind of what you make of it. Like if you take advantage of the faculty and the opportunities that Yaren's talking about, it's life-changing because it's a very realistic, the program is a very realistic way that the actual field is. Like it's like you get to play a lot of new music. You get to work with composers. You get to play a lot of chamber music. You can just isolate yourself and play solo music if you want to, if that's your mission. But it's full of people who have kind of realistic expectations and understandings of the field. It's full of like real people that way. And it doesn't constrict you or tell you how to be in the music field. And I think it's like, because of that, it was a really transformative time for me. So, and it didn't make me feel like, oh, the music field needs to be this way or that way. It's very much like, I don't know, the essence of being an entrepreneurial musician, which is like, you need to do a lot of different things to make it in the field today. You can't just be one track minded. And they offer everything there. So that's my impression of the department. But it was I just was like, Gil and Tina are two of the best teachers in the country, without a doubt. so it was an easy choice for me there. But I loved the vibe of the department, and I'm sure you guys did too.
I agree with the word transformative. I think at Stony Brook is where I really found my voice as a musician, as an artist. And that is, thanks to Gil and Tina. They have this incredible way of supporting you, but also letting you have your own kind of space and helping you, kind of supporting you for when you need to figure things out on your own. So I think that, a good pedagogue knows when to step back and when to kind of zoom in on some challenges you might be facing. So what I knew about the school, similarly to Yaron and Daniel's answers, what I knew was that the school was an open environment where you could pursue whatever track you wanted. And I think both of you were saying that, you felt academically tired out, I guess, from previous programs. And U of T was very similar, had a very rigorous academic curriculum. And I wanted a place I could really focus on my playing, because at the end of my bachelor, I did acquire a lot of knowledge and a lot of skill, but I felt like I could have performed more. So its reputation, Stony Brook's reputation as a performance-centered school was what drew me to the program.
Yeah, nothing I say will add to that. So moving on.
Well, I'd love to add if we can, because I do think that, it's not to give the impression that we didn't do any academic work at Stony Brook, because it may feel like it, because if you're coming from a very strictly rigorous academic curriculum school, it will feel like, oh, what are we learning? But the type of, it's the process of it, the way that you can choose your topic, like your dissertation. It's not the normal, like the university dissertation where you have to write 150 pages, that, like, those rules aren't really set, but they do make sure that the quality is good, right? So I remember working on my dissertation with 3 different professors in one topic, and they were able to customize the classes for me. My class on, I think it was the first time in my academic student career that I was able to have the freedom to pick a composer and set of pieces and really learn it in the historical sense, analytical sense, performance. It's like you get to do all 3 and balance it out. I would learn how to perform it with Gil, even brought it to Tina, and then you analyze it with your theory professors in 101. You talk to historical performances of talking about, like, the backgrounds of it. So it's eye-opening, because that's sort of the skill sets that we need as performers and educators. We write our own program notes now. And that's not just from, like, learning the dates. You just really have to know it. You have to understand it and know how to talk about it. And so it's I think it was, for me, life-changing in that way, because they kind of let me do it. They kind of allowed me to figure it out and customize my studies.
Yeah, and I mean the faculty. I mean, we're talking about Gil, Tina, Arthur Haas, Erica Honish, Perry Goldstein. These are like really serious, very intelligent, very high level people, and they will not let you get away with stuff. I mean,
Right.
people fail their orals, people fail their lecture recitals. It's not like a joke by any means. And you want to impress these people because you end up kind of respecting and loving them by the end of your time there. So, yeah, my lecture recital on Brahms' piano concerto was like, that was such a serious moment for me, and it helped me transition for sure into teaching music appreciation and things like that right away, because okay, I have to be able to lecture for an hour, whatever it is, and feel comfortable, confident, go to the piano, play, come back, talk about it, not be reading off a script, internalize it. and with someone like Erica Honish, who was really detailed about my sources and everything, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's the academic side was certainly valuable.
But not to balance that, the performance aspect is under, I think, a higher level of scrutiny. People fail performance recitals. We all know people that have had to redo concerts, and sometimes painfully. And so that's what I mean. It's like, even though the performance reputation is there, as everyone said, it's like the highest level. Like, you have to be just as rigorous in that preparation. So it's not a blow off. Is that the word, blow off? It's not a blow off
Well,
degree at all.
what I love what you said, it's like it has to be the highest level, but they track your progress so well that it's your highest level for you. They're not comparing you to another student, which sometimes really does happen when you have juries of 8 or 9 or 10 faculty. These are two people who know you from the beginning. They know you as a person, and they're watching you grow. And if you're not reaching your potential, they let you know that. And it's a kind of a disappointment that you want to grow from what they're telling you. So that's been, I mean, that was such a unique thing about Stony Brook. And I think because the faculty is so small, it's just the two of them as piano faculty, and they agree on things, and they're friends, that and they respect each other so much, they can track your progress and make real decisions about you in a way that like a cold jury can't necessarily. So it's very subjective and beautifully subjective that way.
And I was going to say, just not just the piano. Sorry, Emily, one second. Not just the piano department is small. It's a small school. That's the other reputation that I heard about it. It's a very kind of close knit community, and I think that also allows for a different level, like an awesome level of familiarity with the faculty. I mean, everyone's on a first name basis, which is so strange. I mean, they treat you as equals in a certain way, as like we're all in this together. We might be fighting for the same gigs in a few years or something. So it's that kind of vibe. There's this interesting collegial respect that Stony Brook has, and I had never seen that anywhere else.
Yeah, and I think, Daniel, you touched on something that was one of the reasons that I ended up coming to Stony Brook, because sort of like you guys, especially having done my undergrad and master's in New York, as you said, there is kind of this reputation of, oh, go there, you won't have to do, the full dissertation. Well, for me, that was actually a big plus, because, I did want to play, and I like studying. I like being in school, actually, and I liked being in school better having been out of school for a while. And as you said, being able to focus studies, but getting the chance to do 6 huge recitals and to stretch myself in that way, to me, was going to be a lot more of a long-term benefit than spending that same amount of time writing 150 pages like I saw friends do, and get really burnt out. But that wasn't why I came there. And over, because I really didn't know much out of the school outside of that. But it was talking to friends I know, Daniel, other people that I knew who were there, who said exactly what you guys are all touching on, and said, Tina and Gil will help you to find who you are and what you want to be and take you there. And it really is true. Like, they see each of us, they see potential in each of us that we don't even see. And we're all super different players. We're all super different individuals, but that's part of what makes it so great. And several of you used the word transformative, and that was when I graduated. I wrote like a sappy text to Tina, and those were the exact words that I used, that I felt more whole coming out of lessons after working with her. And it's extraordinary.
They teach the individual, which more than they even teach the music in some ways. They teach the music in a profound way, but they so want you to find your own voice in a way that just doesn't exist very much in our field. It just doesn't, which by necessity. I mean, it's just like, that is a hard thing to, it's easier to, hey, that's that's forte there, or that's, to get into the score in a way that might not always see the bigger picture. They're doing both. Believe me, I've had the most detailed lessons with Gil where he's like, okay, like, let's talk about the slurring here. Let's talk about the articulation. Why are you doing it this way? And looking for clues in the score and everything. But he always has your big picture in mind, as does Tina. They have, right from the onset, they have a long-term goal for you. And if they can achieve that, they're happy. Details will happen and, things of that, but they're able to assess you right away from that audition. And then they think, can I work with this person? Can they've told us about that, like how they pick people, right? How they pick people from auditions. It's not always, this is the best player. In fact, sometimes they feel, I have nothing to offer this person, so I'm not going to take them. So it could be a weird process of, do I personally have something to offer this person? Do they seem like a genuine, humble person who's able to learn from me? Are you a nice person? They can tell all these things just from their interaction with you. They ask you questions in the audition. They don't just sit there and make you play. They ask you to sight read, so you have to be a little bit versatile. It's not just, did you memorize this set of really hard pieces? So they get to know you a little bit. And I mean, that's part of it. That's just part of it. Whether they like it or not, it's like, it's not objective. It's, do they feel like you can learn something from them? And then can you go on that journey with them for the next 3 to 5 years? Because we're all going to be around each other for that long.
So what you're saying is, if you're accepted, then you suck a little bit. But if you're not accepted, then you're like legit.
If you're accepted, you're some of the most nice, humble, beautiful human beings. I'm just kidding. Yeah, we all suck. We all suck, basically. Oh well.
Well, they're people's people, I think that's one of the things that I think subconsciously we all want to be like who we want to be. So having Gil and Tina as our role models, and we're all adults by the time we all did our studies as, grown-ups, we've not as adult as them, obviously, but we're DMA students. So it's quite amazing to see somebody to be like, wow, that's an inspiration, like how they teach, how they just interact with you. They treat you as humans. It's not like it's never a top down relationship. Inherently it is, it's your teacher, it's your mentors, but it's always a conversation. And like I don't know about you guys, but I loved our piano projects because it's just so fun to just sit there and listen to everybody play so differently. And we've been in so many different institutions by now that we all know how difficult that is. It's for them to kind of nurture this culture and education where, like what Daniel said, we just play the best as we can in our own colors and voice. That's unique to Stony Brook, I think. I haven't yet experienced that elsewhere. And that shapes the way how I teach. I want my students to all sound differently. I don't want them to all sound exactly the same. I don't want them to sound like me. That's kind of actually one of the things that Gil told me. He's like, don't copy me. See what you want to do here. What's your sound? What's your idea? And I'll be always like, I want this. And he's like, let's do that. Let's figure out how to do that. So that's inspiring. And the fact that Tina and Gil are such secure people musically and humanly, that I can just knock on Tina's door and ask, can I play something for you? And she's like, yeah, come on in. It's not like, did you ask Gil if that's okay? When would it ever, and vice versa. There's never that kind of thing. And so that creates also a culture between studios, between Gil's studio and Tina's studio. We're all like such tight group of people. Yeah.
Daniel mentioned auditions, so I thought this might be a good segue into our next question. Unless someone else wants to address, where were you before coming to Stony Brook?
No.
Now we already kind of covered that.
Okay. All right. I'm interested to know what your audition experience was like at Stony Brook and what were some contributing factors behind your decision to come to Stony Brook.
I can go. I because I'm muted. Um, yeah, like I said, I was soul searching like most of you before going back to school again, and I had that 2 weeks or 3 weeks residency in Banff with Gil, and I just thought, oh, this is somebody that I would love to spend a few years just learning from. So I was a little shy, so I didn't email him or anything. I didn't, he did, we talked before we said bye at Banff that, maybe see you soon. Maybe I'll take your advice and quit my job and come try to study with you. I did say that, but I never, wrote to him. So I went to Stony Brook, and I think it was one of another DMA students' recital was happening at the recital hall. I like to see where I'm playing, so I just walked in. There was a recital going in, and there was Gil and Tina listening to this person's DMA recital, and I was like, "Oh, hi!" And he's like, "Oh, you're here." I'm like, I'm here." So I did the recital. The audition. It was super friendly. I was really nervous because I haven't had a audition like that in a while because I was out of school. I didn't know what to expect. But it was just as I expected. It was just kind of like I can play the way how I want. And I talked to him afterwards. I got to meet Tina. And I know most people audition for many schools, but for me, it was just like, if I get in here, I will go. If not, I'm not going to go to school. It was just either Stony Brook or nothing. So it was an easy decision for me. When I got to study with Gil, it was just definitely, oh, great. That's what I wanted. So I'm here.
Yeah, my audition was, I didn't play perfectly. I remember that. But they asked me, hey, so okay, yeah, they knew who I was already a little bit from Zach and other people. And then just, okay, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from. If you got in here, would you like to commute, or would you rather, because sometimes people live in the city and commute in, or you live out in Stony Brook and really make a commitment to be there. And they always encourage you to live out in Stony Brook so that you get the most out of them and most out of the experience. And I said, I think I'd go out there, and I did. But they wanted to get to know me a little bit. And then I played, and then they put some Berg in front of me, like they probably put in front of all you guys. And I embarrassed myself a little bit with some sight reading. They always kind of give something contemporary that maybe like has a lot of markings or has an unusual time signature or something to, not it's not too difficult, but it's like can throw you off. It's not like sight reading Mozart or something. And yeah, that was it. It was a short audition. It's like 10 minutes. That's another thing. Sometime I think my Yale, well, no, that was for masters. Yale audition was like 20, 25 minutes or something. Sometimes these auditions can be a long time. But it's short and sweet. They figure out everything about you pretty quick. You just be yourself. Don't worry about it. I messed up and I still got in. So who's next? Anna, Emily?
Yeah, I'm not going to have a whole lot to say on this topic because honestly, my audition experience was pretty traumatic. I don't know if you remember, I stayed with Daniel. I don't know if you remember this. I've never had a problem before or since, but I ended up having, I think probably due to stress because of everything that was going on, like 2 weeks before my audition, when I had not even started to learn my program, my whole body just started like tensed up and I basically could not play. And I had called Tina and I knew her a little tiny bit from Yellow Barn. And I said, I don't think there's any way I can come and do this. Like I literally had not started on the audition ramp. And Gil really wanted really prefers that you come and play live, and we went back and forth, and yeah, so it was super rough. I mean, really not good. But I will say they were super understanding, and I remember in the audition, um, you know, Gil would say, do you feel comfortable playing XYZ, or would you prefer to do a slow movement? Like, they were very accommodating of the situation. But yeah, don't go by my audition experience, because it was not not the norm. Yeah.
My audition was very relaxing in comparison to everything else that was going on, because I had 5 auditions within 14 days that were all in the States. And every time I came to the States, I would take the Greyhound from Toronto. And at the same time, I was in complete utter misery because I had like an inflamed what do you call it, like this joint right here, the like TMJ place. It's like mandibular whatever. Anyway, so I could only drink liquids. I couldn't even eat solid food because I couldn't open my mouth because it hurt like a so so my audition was just like, oh my God, they're so nice. um I was taking a lot of painkillers or some, yeah, it was just awful. But the audition environment was very different from other schools, because whenever I went to audition somewhere, it was always like, I don't know, they were a little like not welcoming, judgy. I don't know, different people could call it different things. So when I finally found the lobby of the music building, after walking all over the arts building, I thought, wow, these people are so nice, and there's like a person that takes you to the hall to backstage so you don't get lost in the basement. And then they come pick you up and they ask you about your audition. And everyone at the desk in front seemed really nice. I do remember the food. I remember, I think, were there bagels that year? I don't remember.
Oh yeah, they always have that table of bagels and
Right.
water and bananas and
Yeah, and like little snacks and stuff. And yeah, I don't really remember much of my audition. I remember I played like okay. It wasn't my best. But then afterwards, same like probably everyone else here, Gil came down to the stage and gave me some Berg, I guess, in front of me to sight read, and he started like tapping the tempo on my shoulder, and he was like, okay, go. And I was like, all right. And then afterwards he was like, okay, well, we'll see you later. And I was like, oh, is that like a good sign? And as it would so happen, I ended up here. But yeah, so, the audition experience itself was very encouraging. And, it wasn't long. They were running pretty much on time. I remember some other places I went to were running super late. And they didn't even come and like let you know when you were in your little warm-up room. So I ended up at one school, I ended up like spending half of my warm-up time walking back to the desk to be like, how many more minutes? So yeah, very well organized, I thought, as well. What else?
well, I think one actually, now you mentioned the bagels, it brought up my memory that audition week is like an event for everybody. Like you remember we as students would host them too, because we give our studios as warm up. So we coordinate. There's this whole, Emily would know because Emily was the head TA, right? So like coordinate what time we would donate to the auditionees and to show them around. It's like a group effort, and I don't know, that to me shows a lot, because how hard, we all know it's hard to get people to do things, voluntarily. But at Stony Brook, if there was something had to be done, we all kind of got together and did it. And that's sort of the culture of it, right? So audition was one of those too, where everybody kind of pitched in, did our time and made sure that it was comfortable for everybody. And for us, I remember being fun. I always had my kid in the front, so it was Gil and Tina. I remember them joking, it's like, you're gonna give them the wrong message, like it's gonna be like, you're gonna have to have a baby to come here. In which, my first kid was basically like Stony Brook community baby. They raised her together as a group, so that was nice.
Yeah, the audition week was definitely, sorry, Anna, was definitely always a highlight, I think, for us as students. The bagels, I have to say, since I did do a lot of organization for this, Gil was so particular. Like, not only did they have to be fresh, picked up the morning of every single morning, he only had certain bagel places that he wanted you to go to. And I remember, especially my first year that I was doing the auditions, he was trying to explain to me where to get bagels, but he didn't know what the name of the place was. He was just like, it says bagels. And then, like, you go here, and he was trying to give me all these directions, because it had to be the right ones, and it had to be, only plain sesame seed or everything, because anything else is not a legitimate bagel. He, like, the food situation is super serious, but like on point, excellent. But yeah, it was always super, super fun. It felt like a reunion. You got to see all the people that you maybe wouldn't get to see as much during the year. People who lived in the city, right, who would come in and you'd be there at the same time. And yeah, borrowing coffee makers from studios and all kinds of stuff is, yeah, really fun.
Mikhail, I'm curious, what was your audition like?
Oh man, I had such an interesting experience. Speaking of long auditions, the evening of my Stony Brook audition, I think it was the last day of Stony Brook auditions, like it's a 3-day thing. That morning I was in New Haven. I was doing that 5-hour Yale exam. So that was like a 3-day audition period. And
I met you there, right?
That's where
that
I
was
met
my
you
master's.
and Brendan. Yeah, that was, I met you and Brendan. And after the test, I like ran, grabbed a cab, got to the ferry, and I missed the ferry. So I was gonna be 2 hours late for the next one. And I emailed Gil and Tina, whatever contacts I had at that point, and they said, don't worry about it, come anyway. Because I was just gonna hop on a train and go back down to the city. But I got there and it was so late that they were kicked out of the hall because people had to do a recital. So I was like super late. And but I remember the volunteers were still there. It was Shin Chao and Wei. They even stayed late. That's how dedicated the volunteers are. Before I knew them, they were there to greet. They were like, "You finally made it." And then I went and did my audition in Gil's studio, and it was pretty cool. I was like my brain was so scrambled from everything the past 3 days of like, what do you know about everything music related? Everything from the beginning of time when two stones were clicked together till, music written yesterday. And it was like, so my brain was so scrambled. I was like, I probably can't play anything. I probably can't remember any music, or I might sound like a robot. And so I brought a DVD of my entire program just in case I sucked out. Even like, this is what I really sound like. I can't play. And somehow the playing, like I got energized just by the good vibes that the room had. And it was a cool experience. And then I left thinking that it was, I didn't hand them the CD. I was like, the DVD. I was like, I think this was a decent audition. And it was like you said, it was like 10, 15 minutes, not too long. Some places make you, Indiana, right? Indiana makes you play. I almost played like a whole Beethoven sonata once for an
Oh,
audition.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a different experience for my master's audition at Indiana. There's just so many people. It's a huge school, you know. It's a big university. I mean, isn't there's a concerto competition every month because we have like 8 orchestras. So it's a totally different experience. Yeah.
By the way, I want to add something that was brought up during this whole talk. Each of us gets a studio. Okay, like, I mean, you share it with somebody often, but sometimes it's not even a pianist that you share it with. So we each get our own space to practice for 3 to 5 years. That's not to be underestimated as like a boon for the program. It's just like I've never I don't know. I don't know of that in other places. And I think that seriously affects the vibe, because then this little place becomes your little home. You know, you can decorate it, you can do things with it, you get to love your piano. You have your own space. I mean, even if you're I don't want to keep using Juilliard as an example because, you know, it's not a bad place, but it's just where I went. So of course you're always, of course, competing with other people for practice space, right? And that just necessarily, you know, you're walking around in the halls and, oh, okay, I got to grab that room. Okay, great. It just adds a little anxiety, a little stress, not knowing that you might go to school and have a piano to practice on. So to be able to have your own space with your own key, yeah, I loved that about Stony Brook. And of course, often you become friends with somebody who, okay, hey, by the way, I have a slightly better piano and I'm going to be out of town this week. Why don't you go ahead and jump in there and use? I mean, it's just great. I love it. I also, since we're already kind of approaching nearly the end, is it okay if we skip to the last question we have prepared? Because I really like that question, to talk about sorry, Yaron, I'm stealing it. If you guys can talk about, all of us can talk about a lesson experience that was really meaningful to us. I know we all have many of them, and we can talk about as many as we want, I guess. But yeah.
How did your perspective on piano shift or change after coming to Stony Brook? What did you, okay, so yes, I can answer this question. So both Tina and Gil have very contrasting and complementing styles of teaching. Gil is very much, at least in my own personal experience, Gil is very big picture. And he's always focused a lot on expression and, as we all know, gesture. And Tina, on the other hand, is very nitpicky, and Tina was very influential in my approach to practicing a little more constructively and maybe with a little more method. So both of them, like that combination, I found, you know, really potent for combining especially if you studied with both of them at the same time. And then my perspective on piano shift.
Well, wait, hang on. You just brought up something really big, so we should talk about that because, like, because for me, Tina, like nitpicky, I don't know would be the word. For me, it was more like she worked so much for me on the approach to the instrument, like how to achieve things technically that I wanted conceptually, because she actually demanded all the time that you have a concept for what you're playing. She was not okay with you not having an idea of what you're doing at the piano. And I mean, you know, I think part of that was intuition. Maybe some of that she got from Anne Shine, because studying with her, she is also kind of that way, where you'll be playing a passage, you'll be in the middle of the development of a sonata, and then she'll say, stop, okay, what key are you in? And like, what do you feel about this section? And oftentimes, I don't know. I don't know what key I'm in, and I don't know how I feel. It's like, that's not okay. You know, you should be, Evelyn.
I thought of that.
But yeah, she always she she was happy to have imagery, happy to have poetry. She always said, "What's your word for the beginning of this piece?" Gil, on the other hand, doesn't like that at all. That's just his approach. He doesn't supplement his he doesn't want you to supplement things necessarily, or he doesn't supplement himself with words or abstract concepts that help inspire him. He's mainly concerned with sound. So he's wanting you to always listen to the sound and see how it's developing and trust your instincts about where that sound is going. So for me, that was the difference between Gil and Tina. And also, by the way, to my surprise, Gil talked a lot about technique to me, a lot. But it was mainly when I asked him to. He wouldn't necessarily do it unless I said, I'm having a lot of trouble with this passage. How would you approach this? And he has a kind of more minimalist approach where he uses a lot of the weight comes from his forearms and from a very loose hand, rather than Tina talks about using your whole body, and the strength of your playing and your sound coming even from your back and from your butt and your legs and everything. And Gil is like, I don't know any about that. I trust you, Tina, to talk about that, but I don't know it. So they have very different approaches, but their sounds are both huge, captivating, and like intentional all the time. And so it's always fascinating to hear them bicker and argue about styles of teaching. I think they do complement each other really well, because in the end they agree, but the way they get there is very different, and it helps different people.
I definitely agree.
Go ahead, Anna. Sorry.
No, I also think that, to speak a little more on how Stony Brook caters to more of an individual approach. I think Tina and Gil approach each of their students in a different way and evaluates, what is the area that this particular student needs the most help in. So it is a very individualized approach, which is what you want, I think, in a graduate program, because you're trying to graduate as someone who has something unique to offer.
Yeah, they talk to every one of us differently. Even the most simple thing of how they just actually talk to you, the way how they have conversation with you. Both Tina and Gil, they're just, and it's not artificial at all. It's not like artificially, like Gil sees Daniel, I'm like, okay, I'm now in Daniel mode, or like, oh, Mikhail mode. It's not that. They're just so it's in their intuition, and they're just such, I guess that's what I mean by like they're people's people. They know how to talk to you. They know how to hear your sound differently, so that our lessons are, I'm sure my lessons with Gil was nothing like Daniel's or Emily's or Anna's and Mikhail's, and vice versa, which I think is quite special. And it's also reason why Tina did that duo class. I don't know if she still does it. I took it with Brendan, the Sonata duo class. That was super fun too, because that was different for me than my lessons and chamber coachings with Gil. Yeah.
My first lesson with Gil was like one of the more memorable ones, because I was playing 109, and he saw how tense I was coming from an experience like Juilliard, and coming from the feeling of, oh, this is Gil Kalish, he's some great pianist and I need to impress him, and he said very little, but he was just on the third movement of 109. He was just talking about how, hey, it's just a folk tune. Just treat it like it's like a song that you would sing at the beginning. It has all these markings, mezzo voce, and it's very espressivo and all this stuff. And in German and in German and Italian, right? It's like so that can get you tied up in knots, and that's the exact opposite that he wanted me to be in. He wanted me to be myself. He wanted me to not worry, and it took a long time for us to get there. But I remember it was like several lessons in. I had forgotten all about it. It was many lessons in. Maybe it was months in, and he finally put his hand on my shoulder. He's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, now you're sounding better." And I knew what he meant. He meant in like a big picture way, I was more relaxed. And so he always has in his mind, like, he's trying to get you to feel a certain way, and you don't try to overthink it. Just let him do what he needs to do to get you there. But yeah, go ahead, Emily.
Yeah,
No.
it's so funny. Sorry, Anna. It's so funny that the memorable lesson you went to was 109, because when I was thinking about this question, the one that popped up to me was my first semester with Tina doing the slow movement of 111. I mean, we did the whole sonata together, but it was, and I think, I mean, from the beginning, from my first lesson with her, there was this great sense of trust somehow between the two of us. Like it just clicked immediately. And but I don't remember where it fell. It was a couple months in, pretty early on, doing the opening of the slow movement. And yeah, similarly, kind of tendency to obsess over, can always be more beautiful somehow, right? But oddly enough, what I remember from the lesson was something like totally magical that she said in the moment, which was, that we think so much of as pianists about, how to stay loose, relax your shoulders, relax your arms, don't get too intense. But she pointed out that when we listen to music, when we have, really visceral experiences, we experience tension in our bodies, and she asked me, can you think back to a really memorable concert experience that you had and where you experienced that tension? For me, it was like very much sort of in my core. And then we worked on the opening, kind of trying to channel, like feeling a space where I could connect to the music, but that didn't interfere with what I was doing at the piano. And it was so hard, but there were like 10 or 15 seconds of just total magic. And that's something that's really, really stuck with me. I mean, as far as my work together with her over the years, I would say I feel like she taught me how to access so many more sounds that allowed me to find more of what I was looking for as a pianist. But as far as specific feedback, that was one that was kind of just mind blowing to me at the time, and still is.
Yaron, Mikkel. Yaron, memorable lesson. I know you've had them.
Oh, it's I can't like really pinpoint to one. There's so many. But it's funny, Daniel, because you said, actually we talked about technique with Gil, and my background in piano playing, it like my undergrad, it's all I did with my undergrad teacher. I was pretty broken by the time I went to my undergrad. I played so much when I was young, and I had weird tendonitis. I had some health issues. So what my undergrad teacher did for me at Oberlin, Haewon Song, she was like a wizard. She just untied everything and put me back together, and it was extremely helpful for me for that period of time. My undergrad in 5 years. Couple that with my psych degree, it was just what I needed, in my young age. And then I went to master's studying with Arnaldo Cohen and Jean-Louis Hagenauer in Indiana. It was just kind of, okay, now you have this foundation. What are you going to do with it as a musician? Like, what field do you want to pursue? Is it like, what kind of musician are you? What kind of sound do you want? And then, like I said, 2 years of soul searching, trying to figure out what I like to do. And then now last degree, last teacher, the last mentor, and here's Gil. And I think he just kind of looked at me and thought, okay, he's like, just let's see what you want. Like, what is it that you want really? What sound? Because I know I'm stubborn. We all are probably. If you're in music, you're stubborn. And so I had a very clear sound that I always wanted. It won't be consistent all the time. So consistency is always something that I always wanted to work on. And Gil kind of helped me understand that it's not like the act of playing it the same way every time. It's just about being confident that you can do it in whatever situation. And the fact that I can go on stage and listen to my sound and adjust to it according to the piano, according to the hall I'm playing, according to the size of the audience, the feedback, all of these things, like just being so in tune with me and my surrounding and like my outcome. So that's why it's hard to pinpoint. Like this lesson did that for me because it was just kind of all inclusive. And he's also somebody that he can criticize you and you know that it's for your benefit. Because sometimes you hear criticism and you don't quite know, was that criticism for the music or was it for the teacher? Was it for me? There's a lot of things in criticism. There's art to it. But with Gil, I knew exactly if he criticized me something, he meant it and it was for my benefit, but nothing else. And so like my first year, I just, it wasn't planned, but I had a kid. I was married and I was pregnant. So it was a pretty challenging time for me. It was totally unplanned. Finally I got into school mode again. And here I am, just this big life change. And he was just so accommodating. And then on top of that, Brendan, my husband, and I were preparing for a big competition that he went to, Queen Elizabeth. So it was a huge repertoire that we put together. And it was just so much fun. And Gil treated, and I had to sort of kind of make a decision. It was either really I'm going to learn all these big duo parts for Brendan, or my solo stuff that I had kind of planned. And I really couldn't do both with all that stuff going in. I said, okay, let's do this duo. And he was so supportive. He coached the whole way. I learned so much. And he's such an amazing chamber musician. So it wasn't like I just neglected solo playing. It was just developing. But afterwards, though, is what made a difference for me. Because after that competition was done, I came back, I gave birth, everything, had my maternity leave. And like one of the first lessons I came back, started playing, I think Haydn Sonata or something, pretty sloppy playing. And he's just like, Yaren, you need to take yourself a little bit more seriously. And that like just hit me so hard because I knew exactly what he meant. He's like, you need to know how to care about what you do. Like he's like, you put your heart and energy out when you're playing chamber music, when you're with your kid, when with your student. But when it comes to your work, you don't care because it's just you. And that's something that I did neglect for a few years because I was just on the go. And so that was a turning point in my lesson that I was like, okay, I need to get my act together and get it done. So like that kind of criticism, it's like for me, like you can believe that that's for your benefit.
That's really beautiful. That's what they can do is like pinpoint something about your character that you actually need to work on more than even just your playing. It's funny you mentioned that about how Gil got you to listen to the sound, your own sound more, because that's exactly what Tina did for me. Was in a master class, maybe you guys were all there, a studio class, and I was playing, and she's like, I don't think. And by the way, Tina is an amazing master class giver. Gil is like, I don't like master classes. He gives an amazing master class too, but Tina really shines in a master class setting. And she just pinpointed, she was like, I don't feel like you're really listening to yourself. And the way that she put it and the way that she understood that I liked, that I was trying so badly to imitate a, a, a previous playthrough that I had of this piece that went so well. No matter how well a playthrough goes or how well a performance goes, you should never try to imitate it because then you will necessarily lose the magic of the moment. You just will. And the way that she pinpointed that about the way I was listening was so that was a turning point for me too, because I was always in imitation mode. Go ahead, Mikhail.
I was just gonna say, I think one of the words we just didn't say it, but I think empathy is the key word with both Tina and Gil, and humility as well. It's like this perfect combination of those ways of being and existing, and it's actually really beautiful. I haven't worked much with Tina, but that way about how you feel and that's quite profound, Emily. Thank you for sharing. I feel like you gave away a secret. That's really awesome. And my lessons with Gil have been interesting. It's always been, sometimes I've had the luxury to build a program or build a piece with him, you know, come back a few times, you know, over a course of a few weeks and do it. But other times I've just had to like, hey Gil, I'm in town, I have a concert tomorrow. And of course, somehow this amazing man makes time, and he would listen to my entire concert. And you know, he's just that kind of generous teacher and pedagogue. He I think my most memorable lesson was early on. It must have been my first year when I'm a classical pianist, and then moving to New York, I suddenly became infatuated and thrown into the world of improvisation. When I finally started to take it, improvisation and jazz and etc., as a serious pursuit, I went to Gil and said, hey, I'm talking to Ray Anderson, I'm talking to these people, I kind of said it in a braced manner, like a manner I was braced for Gil to lash out at me and say, you know, you need to focus. But I said, I want to, you know, really devote equal time to other styles of music. And he gave me a hug and said, that's such a beautiful thing. And he said that he considered that all music is aspiring towards the same goal. It's all trying to say the same thing. And he said that in such a beautiful way. And I was like, wow, what a open, and you know, this is Gil, who's a legendary classical pianist, you know, who's worked with living composers and from everything. He can play anything. And I think that openness also extends to his playing, because he has an interesting career where chamber music and this quote unquote collaborative pianism has been a big part of his existence as well. I mean, besides the amazing solo output that he has. And he really, you know, he squashes the belief that a certain path is the only way to success. I mean, he's so showing that a pianist can have such a beautiful and positive role in any position, and that every time we get to play a piece of music solo in a big group, as a duo, whatever, collaboratively, it's a beautiful expression of music making. So it's not just we all have to be solo pianists and play the rep. It's like so open. So that's my memories of Gil and Stony Brook.
Well, I think we did a pretty good job. Anything we forgot to cover?
Damn, I was gonna say something, but I forgot. I was gonna be like, in my studies with Gil, he like, you know, because you guys were talking about interpretation and how he's able to teach the student instead of just the piece. It's like this perfect collision point of subjectivity and objectivity in this profound way. That's it. I forgot to say that.
I think that's more rare than we think. Even, you know, it's just to really be able to have the student's interest at heart at every moment. Um, when I was playing Brahms for him, unbelievably picky. I mean, because, you know, it's Brahms. Like, you know, you got to respect this stuff. It's, you know, but, and so he won't let you get away with bad playing, but he'll never try to, he'll never stop you and say, no, 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 like this, you know? And similarly with Tina, they both have incredible patience, and they think very carefully about what they're going to say, because they know you're going to take it to heart, and they want you to be influenced in a way that's open. Yeah, it's great. It's a reason. Hey, it's a reason we're all. I mean, I still play for them. You know, I play for Tina. I play for Gil. Thank God we have Zoom now. Even though I guess we had stuff like Zoom and Skype before, but you know, now we're actually making strong use of it. So I think I'll be playing for them till I die.
I know, I'm gonna forever crash piano parties. It's great that they do these classes now, weekly projects that I don't know. I don't know about you guys, but like since last March, first Tina's etude class, and then Gil's Bach, and now this Couperant and everything. It's like a lifeline. It's really important. It's yeah. I joke and I tell like my colleagues and friends I'm like in a piano nerdy book club, but it's it's so much more than that. It's an amazing thing that I feel really fortunate to be part of.
Go Sea Wolves.